When you reach the ancient town of Wick in Caithness, you're nearly 300 miles north of Edinburgh, and you're closer to Bergen in Norway than you are to London. It was once a great fishing port with up to 2,000 boats in the harbour. You rarely find more than 20 or 30 there now. It may seem a strange place to choose for starting a factory for handmade glass, but there were people who needed jobs, and there was the light and colour of Caithness that helped to suggest the shapes and forms of a world of flowing glass-like things. Three kinds of people work with glass. A designer's job is to understand the qualities of the material and to know how it will respond to the processes of manufacture. He has to know what kind of price and what kind of market can be found, and he must give the company's products a clear identity whilst experimenting with all the possibilities of form and colour. Then come the people in the glass house who put the prototypes into production. They are the fetchers and carriers, the gatherers, blowers and moulders who work in teams to make every individual piece. Finally, there are artist craftsmen who embellish the surfaces of finished glassware. For them, glass is what canvas is to a painter. Colin Terris is a glass engraver. He is one of the very few people in Britain expert in the technique of copper wheel engraving. He learned his craft at the Edinburgh College of Art and is in charge of the engraving department at Caithness Glass in Wick. The art of glass blowing is older than Christianity and probably originated in Syria. The Egyptians discovered how to make glass beads 6,000 years ago. The Romans set up the first glassworks in Britain, and later Huguenots and Normans revived the tradition. Later, industrial processes replaced handmade techniques. In modern times, the finest quality of handmade design was often American or Scandinavian. The glassworks at Wick started from absolutely nothing only 10 years ago. Every skill and process had to be learnt. Every tool had to be made. Glass is made from sand, mixed with potash and traces of metal oxides that give it colour. The melting takes place at temperatures around 1400 degrees centigrade. Glassworkers call it a metal, and when it's clear and pure, they say it has a good colour. An engraver's wheels and the lathe he uses are entirely personal to his own sense of touch. Colin Terris prepares his bench to engrave a goblet that will be specially made for him.
One of the main difficulties about engraving is that you can buy the lathe, which is this part here, but unfortunately you've got to make every other part of it by hand. The main part being the spindle here, which goes into the machine like this, is hammered in securely. We've got now to motorize the lathe and to have this part of the spindle running perfectly true. Now we're filing this to make a little collar so that we can seat in the copper wheel that does the actual engraving. And the reason why we use copper is because it's a lovely soft metal and it bonds beautifully with the abrasive we use. Now, sometimes the wheel runs by itself and stays on, other times we have to hold it. We'll hold it. Then I'm going to rivet this on, hoping that this little point here is going to mushroom out and make a rivet joint. We've now got this wheel virtually true. All the bits that are out of true have been pared off with this very sharp knife. And we have a true wheel. It's running very, very smoothly. A good way of testing this is to put your thumbnail down and run under the wheel and you feel any little jaggy bits at all. The wheel's true now to my satisfaction. I then bring across my feeder which keeps a continuous supply of abrasive, which is this here, down here, running on the wheel. The copper only gives you the shape, it won't cut glass itself. You've got to use a cutting medium with it, and in this case we use abrasive, which is carborundum powder mixed with oil. It's running smoothly and it's spread very evenly over the wheel. I'm now going to test it out and see what kind of mark it makes on the glass itself. Now you can see from this that a great deal of the glass where the wheel comes in contact is obscured by the actual grinding paste itself. And this means that one, you've got to have a great deal of confidence exactly where you're placing the wheel, and two, that you can put the wheel back in the same place every time. Therefore, to be an engraver, you've got to have a vast amount of confidence, and you'll work a great deal by touch as well as by sight.
The goblet that Colin will engrave is being made by Paul Isat, master craftsman. There are 3 parts which have to be fashioned and assembled: the bowl, a stem of twisted threads of coloured glass, and the foot. He's not made a goblet like this for 10 years.
He was Spanish, really. Came with his father then to France, worked in France, speaks fluent French. Then came to Scotland, worked in Edinburgh, finished up in Perth, and then I think it would be about 1962, came up to Caithness here to train really and to organise the factory from a technical point of view. I get on very well with him, he stimulates me greatly. We work well as a team. In other words, I have an idea, I'd like a certain piece made. Paul and I go in, I draw it on the floor in chalk, and he measures it up, and he can produce this design, virtually first time to within 1/8 of an inch. Right, we now have the glass, which in this case is a beautiful goblet in a very traditional manner. It's made of crystal, which is a new departure for the company, a lead crystal. And we then have the problem of deciding what to put on the glass. And in this instance, I would suggest something, an engraving which goes right round the glass, so that when you finish up, you can look through and see a design, a picture on both sides. This instantly suggests to me something like a procession, and one of my favourite stories is the one about the Pied Piper of Hamelin. So I suggest that we do this. If we go across to the sketch, you'll see it very, very roughly drawn out here. The Pied Piper in front, all the wee children behind them, and a background of houses. Now in this case, I've drawn on some of the houses here. I'll then pass the glass to one of my young trainee girls, who will sandblast in a background of houses, very, very flat. When this is done, she'll pass the goblet back to me, and I will then engrave on top of the houses, in actual fact cutting through them, so we get this lovely 3-dimensional effect of a deep figure, which is engraved with the copper wheel. By the time I've finished engraving this with copper wheel, the complete job, I should think, will take about 15 to 17 hours. And at the deepest part, say the Pied Piper himself, the engraving will be dug into the glass to a depth of about 1/8 of an inch at its deepest point. This is the whole crux about glass engraving. The further in you cut, the further the object you cut seems to stand out the way. Works completely in reverse. We've now got the glass back, and it's been sandblasted all the way round about. A complete background picture, a silhouette picture of a town. And the main figure is the Pied Piper here. We'll start on him and work our way around the smaller figures as we go, probably adding some at a later date. I'm putting in his arm first, the really deep cuts, right the way down, indicating through the drawing the place where the arm will eventually be done in detail. I'm just putting in huge sausage-type shapes at the minute. The main forms, in other words. The glass is crystal in this case. It cuts quite quickly. A nice soft metal to work with.
Another piece by Colin Terris is called Il Presidente. The tall vessel shows a tower topped with barbed wire. A dictator harangues a rebellious crowd below. Each engraver has his own style. Colin's work is full of movement and agitation. His subjects are often humorous, satirical and witty. Two other engravers, trained at Edinburgh and who work with Colin, express their personalities in different ways. David Gulland is more poetic and reflective.
One of the things I've always wanted to do is to gather together the drawings of seabirds and cliffs, which I'm familiar with in this north part of Scotland, and put them into one bowl like this. I have already engraved the seabirds on individual glasses, but I think it's much more fun to have them as we have them here on the bowl. Although it may seem to be perhaps rather a laborious task to go over the surface of a glass, spending maybe 20 hours on one piece, I feel that while you're doing it, you become very involved with it. It's a little microcosm of the world. I suppose most creative artists feel the same way, that when you've finished a piece, you don't any longer feel about it in that way. The next job becomes the new enthusiasm.
Ann Robertson works with great clarity and precision. She loves detail, costume and romantic themes.
It was more of a challenge to me. I thought when I saw one of the girls at college doing it, it looked so difficult, and I thought, I'll never be able to do this. And I found it more satisfying when I was able to in fact produce a finished piece. This is a bowl with Paul Revere writing to warn the Americans that the British had landed. We have to do a lot of research into the subject we're doing to make sure that costumes are right, the period. Here we had to have the costume right for the British soldiers and the types of guns that they had at the time. And you've got to be fairly careful with your facts in this kind of subject. This is the ancient mariner with the albatross. And this tall shape I found lent itself very well to this subject, with the sweeping wings and the boat with the ancient mariner. The finish is very important, and the detail. With copper wheel engraving, you can get all the sort of very fine feathered effects with a very tiny wheel. And all the details are finished off with very small wheels.
Only two schools in Britain teach the art of copper wheel engraving. Colin Terris, David Gulland and Ann Robertson, like Charles Orr, the designer at Caithness Glass, were all students at Edinburgh not long ago. Between them, they've revived an almost extinct tradition of fine design in a place where glass had never been made before. It's a gratifying achievement for them, and for people who enjoy possessing fine things. It also means that in Wick, 100 people have new jobs in a remote town where employment is a problem. Some people think art schools are a waste of time and money. In this case, they couldn't be more wrong.